Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Career Cloud Radio podcast. I'm your host, Michael Gardon. Today, we've got Joel Bein back on the podcast for a repeat appearance. So a lot of you may remember Joel from a few months ago, maybe up to a year ago. We had Joel on and we were talking a lot about resumes and how to stand out using a really cool tool that his company had created at crash.co. He has now made a little bit of a pivot and he is the CEO of Careerhackers.com. And he's here to kind of talk to us about this idea of career hacking, which is super interesting to me, and everything that they are out trying to do, building community around, sort of this 21st century job hunter mindset. And so we're going to get into all of that. But I want to welcome Joel to the podcast again. Joel, great to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So, like I said, I love this idea of career hacking. Tell us a little, let's start us off with the genesis of careerhackers.com and like what your team is really trying to do.
Yeah. So we rebranded from Crash to careerhackers.com back in April of 2022. And we're a media company now, and we're focused on content creation, creating our newsletter, the Daily Job Hunt newsletter, going out 6 days a week, and just becoming a hub, a robust library of resources with hundreds of blog posts and links to top career communities or podcasts or tools or boot camps. And we're just looking to be your one-stop shop, if you will, for empowered career mindset. And whether you're looking to stand out and land the next job, stand out from the hundreds of applicants, if you're looking to make a career shift, relaunch your career, dive into a completely new field to break into tech, there's so much possibility for your life and career when you kind of get down to the fundamentals of the mindset of curiosity, creativity, and self-empowerment. You say, especially with curiosity, which is one of my core values and our company's core values, where how do you engage with that sense of following your interests about what companies are exciting to you, what skills are exciting to you, and also knowing that you can learn new skills. You can learn to code from scratch. You can learn marketing from scratch. You can learn anything. You can build new connections if you engage in curiosity and create a organic rapport with people and reach out and create value. So there's just this general mindset of how do we, in this, especially as the 21st century unfolds, we have more and more of these remote work and economic patterns that are changing the way we work. How do we become more empowered and kind of look at yourself as an entrepreneur, whether or not you're starting a business or owning a business, that you can, if you're an employee, you can be an entrepreneurial employee and you can take that mindset towards landing the opportunity and ultimately becoming more fulfilled and alive in your career. Because that's the vision of the world that I want to see, is people coming alive. So that's kind of the overview of our company, and just seeking to be that resource where people can get that motivational charge and motivational empowerment to take that next step, to launch their career, to stand out, and all those things.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You kind of mentioned this 20th century to 21st century mindset change. And you mentioned to me before we started recording as well. And that just kind of got me thinking. And it's very true. A lot of our economy is completely set up still from the 20th century, early 20th century, and like the Industrial Revolution, and organized work for efficiency's sake. And what organized work for efficiency's sake a lot of times takes is order takers, people to do a specific thing, right? And I think what you're getting at in the kind of the 21st century mindset is this idea that work is very different when you start looking into the future. Work is about solving problems. Work is about taking ownership. Work is about the words you use were like creating value. And not everybody understands really what creating value really means. And you're totally right in terms of everyone can be an entrepreneur. I talk a lot about treat your boss like a client. And it's a mindset shift. It's a complete mindset shift. So talk to us a little bit about this. I want to pick into this idea of value creation. Like, what is creating value? What does that mean to somebody?
Value, of course, is subjective. So there's not an exact definition of what that means, other than, can you look at the company's perspective or the entrepreneur's perspective that you're potentially going to pitch, and you want them, if you want to work for them, you want to provide your services to them. Well, can you solve a problem that's going to be valuable from that company's perspective? Maybe that's creating value could be booking travel for an entrepreneur who's got other things that are better that he could be doing, right? There's a lot of low hanging fruit for people who are early in their careers who have a low opportunity cost with their time, and say, hey, I'm going to create value for this person who's an emerging entrepreneur whose time is becoming increasingly valuable. How can I help him out by offering to do some grunt work for him? Right. That's an example. Or how can you create value by, showcasing your initiative for, say, you're looking to land. I was just writing about this in our newsletter. Right? If you wanted to stand out and land a customer support role, for example, well, you want to prove that you care about that particular company's product and their mission. Maybe you create a mock script for what you would say for in conversation with a frustrated customer for that particular product or service, and you demonstrate, what empathy you would give, and then you would demonstrate what solutions there are available with that particular company. You can showcase that you've researched that company's particular, specificities and whatnot, and you're going above and beyond with this project. That's value. Like, comparing that, I mean, it's all like compared to what as well, right? Or like compare that mock script project that you send for a customer support role compared to a cover letter where you're just talking about what you've done in your life. And it's going on and on and on about your past accomplishments, which isn't necessarily a problem. But from the company's perspective, way more valuable when you present them something that's tangible and concrete, specific to their needs. All of a sudden, you just set out and showcase that you are creating value for them, solving problems for them. So at the end of the day, it's something that is going to be of value to that company's perspective, and how can you get in their shoes? And that's really the mindset shift.
Yeah, to take it up level, value, like at a broad definition, is really like the difference between what somebody gets and what their cost is, or what they pay for. And if you start to think about, like, every decision that you make is kind of like this investment decision, or every interaction you have, there's sort of like this investment component to it, right? Like, you're sitting down you're networking with somebody, you're asking them for, 30-minute coffee meeting, right? Like, their cost is, I got to sit down with this guy for 30 minutes, and my expectation is I'm probably going to get, same old conversation I normally have. And then when somebody comes in with, something that you described, an example, a mock-up, email or something like that they demonstrates they've thought about the particular issue that person is there for, or that they do their job in. There's like this massive difference. You're standing out. This person now, instead of just giving you 30 minutes of their time for charity, basically, they are getting something. And in return, they're more likely to help you, recommend you, give you a job, whatever that may be. And to take this all the way up the chain, I mean, this is how companies scale and how companies make money, is by providing value, right? They provide some type of service that is of greater benefit than their end consumer's cost. And so the whole mind, like thinking that way, and the whole mindset on that is vitally important. And if you don't get that, if you don't understand that the world revolves on value, you're going to struggle because it's going to be a constant, well, what am I getting now? What am I paid for? And you see this whole this whole quiet quitting revolution, right? Yeah, it's to me, it's, I'm sorry, I'm riffing on my own podcast, but it's something that really stings me because at the end of the day, you have to be showing you're providing value above and beyond, or you are going to get eliminated by just competitive forces. So that's my little take on it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the quiet quitting thing, it's like, I can have empathy for people like feeling frustrated with an environment that's maybe it's in that has that culture of like just show up and check boxes. But the reality is you have a lot of power in that situation. Let's say you're at a job that's it's sort of mediocre, or you don't feel like you're getting a lot of autonomy, right, or creativity. Well, I would say take two choices. Number one, go 110% into that opportunity and see how you can make it more fulfilling and more autonomous with your own initiative, and start connecting to other colleagues in other departments and learning about what their needs are and seeing if you can create value for them and make their lives easier. How can you start creating extra projects and thinking about the company's growth plans and how you could create something new? Maybe you say, I'm going to draft up a new website for this company because it's really not that great. So I'm going to draft this up on my own time without permission. Just like, hey, I made this. What do you think? You can go above and beyond, not because you have to, but because you get to, and you get to have more fulfillment, and you get to potentially receive a lot of value in return by building a reputation for yourself and a mindset of going 110%. And then maybe you actually realize that the job is awesome, or it's pretty solid now because you've created a new reality for yourself in a sense. Or if it's really just that, awful of an environment for you, then just quit. And then you have the power to actually quit, right? Not quietly quit. But
right. Quit loudly.
Quit loudly, 100%, go out and say, now I'm going to empower myself to create value for another opportunity. And when you start looking into it, there's a lot of opportunities out there, even in this economy, when you start digging into the possibilities of just remote work and you start following your interests and figuring out what skills you can develop or whatever the case may be, you can start creating a new path for yourself that's going to be more aligned. So yeah, I think there's just so much power we have to act in our self-interest, right? And say, how can I give value? And ultimately that's going to give yourself more value.
Yeah. And to companies' credits, like a lot of companies they realize they have maybe a problem, a cultural problem or something like that. And they're trying to figure that out. And it takes time. And I think like as a boss, like when I've been in a position where I'm a boss, like I want people to take shots, right? Like I want people to stick their neck out and be creative and think outside the box, because that helps me. Like that helps me in that type of position. So I agree with what you said. Like I have a lot of empathy. I do have a lot of empathy for people that are like in this quiet quitting category, because I've got 3 kids at home, right? Like I get it. It's hard to deal with all of the stuff in life that you have to deal with on top of work. But the reality is like you said, you have more options than you think. Like having few options isn't the problem that exists in the world today. It's almost having too many and culling them. And so whenever you experience a tough work situation or you're in a culture that you don't like, your best friend is to have options. And one of the ways that you have options is to keep your network really up to date and have a really strong network. So you can reach out to somebody and say, hey, I'm having a problem with this. Like what's going on in your world? And are there any opportunities over there? Or, keeping your nose to the grindstone and being tapped into other career communities like career hackers, and making connections with people, because when you have options, then you just have a ripcord at any time. Like you can loudly quit, you can pull the ripcord and leave your job for a better one.
It's almost like I could just say, like, I think people sometimes view their boss as like the authority figure,
Right.
going to tell them what to do the way that, you know, their 10th grade English teacher told them what to do. And it's just actually not the case that the company has that much authority. Like, it's really, when you start to kind of like wake up to this, you realize that companies are just people, and they're actually incentivized to treat you as well as possible so they can retain you. And it's a two-way street, is my point. It's a two-way street. Like, you don't have to follow any certain rules. You are completely in your own power, especially when you start viewing yourself like that, as like, you're the CEO of Me Incorporated.
Right.
And then you can choose to engage with other people in the marketplace and other companies. And at the end of the day, you're not stuck. I think that's maybe like a carryover that 20th century is when there's more of that, more common to just be at one company for decades. And there's more of like that mold of, you have this particular opportunity in your town that you're living in, and you kind of don't necessarily see as much possibility and options. But now in 2022, there's really a lot you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are, like, you know, I try to think every day about people that are struggling in their careers or struggling to find a connection to what they want to do or whatever it is. What's your take on what most people are kind of missing in their career journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a sense of creative fulfillment and purpose oftentimes. And that circles back to what I said earlier about curiosity, where oftentimes it requires of you to ask yourself what you're actually curious about. Versus, are you kind of living out some momentum of your past, some major that you chose in college, and you know, you're 18 making this decision, and then you found yourself on this trajectory, and now you're in this career lane, but then you're not necessarily fulfilled. And if you want to create that fulfillment, then it's going to ask of you to be honest with yourself. We talk a lot about self-honesty and self-knowledge. To be able to, you know, go take a walk for an hour and like do some reflection and ask yourself, you know, what are you interested in, or what are you curious about? And this is not asking yourself what my one true calling is, what my one passion in life is, what's the one thing I'm going to do the rest of my life. It's actually a lot simpler than that. It's just like, like, would I be curious about like learning UX, UI design, like build prototypes for like mobile apps? Does that sound interesting to me? Maybe you've never heard of that career path before. And it just asks you to kind of like look and go test things out and see what's might be compatible with your interests. And so, yeah, I believe that like our mission is to help people discover and do what makes them come alive. Like, ultimately, I want people to be alive, but I don't think you can be alive if you're not kind of starting with the kindling of that flame to figure out, what am I curious about doing? For me, you know, I forget how much I told my story on the first time I was on the show, but just like my curiosity is education. And I was working in the standard system, and I said, I'm not sure this fits with me. You know, I'm not sure this is ideal for the way that people can engage in education and engage in that natural curiosity. So I was curious about new paradigms in that, and that's how I came across my new career path and started making new connections. Started the podcast and reaching out to new people, and you know, ultimately pitching the entrepreneur who founded Careerhack, Isaac Morehouse. Anyway, that's the real short version of it. But the point is that I was starting, like, I feel like I'm really alive in my career right now because I was asking myself those little questions, like, what is my philosophy of education? What is my philosophy of how people learn and grow? And that snowballed into what I'm doing now. So
Can you refresh us? Was there a specific moment where you realized that it wasn't the right fit? Like, was there a specific thing that stood out?
I mean, I sort of knew going in to my career go as uh, a music educator. I was teaching music at every level, like fourth grade to 12th grade. Um, but I actually knew before my first job when I was 22, I was already exploring my philosophy of education and starting to listen to podcasts. And I was like, yeah, I don't think this conventional system's the way to go. I think this is actually a huge problem here. But I had a lot of momentum. I talk about that unconscious momentum. You know, I had that major of studying education in my undergrad and getting that certification. And that was like this deep dive focus that I was preparing to do. And so I chose to go in there kind of knowing that it wasn't ultimately where I wanted to stay, but I kind of just kept that momentum, especially at that, uh, less mature age of 22. That's the choice that I made. But I kind of knew that I wanted to create new pathways ultimately in my life. But I think, what matters also is that I chose to feel truly discontent, right? Where it'd be easy to be in an okay job and kind of like suppress your feelings about like you actually hate this job, like you want something better, but you're like, oh no, it's secure and I have a lot of like, people are praising me for this, I'm good at it, or like whatever the case may be. But if you really turn up the volume on the discontentment you might feel, then that's actually give you more of a catalyst to make a change. So oftentimes I encourage people to take this mindset of discontented optimism, where you turn up the volume on discontentment. I'm so fed up with this that I'm going to go do something constructive about it and create a new path for myself. Right? Rather, don't be a complaining like martyr, right? Critic and a martyr of every situation. Say, yeah, okay, I'm really frustrated with this situation. How can I channel that frustration towards building those side projects, building those connections, building those skills, and then ultimately making a shift?
Yeah, it's interesting because like that discontentment is fuel for creativity, and you're kind of letting yourself become creative by listening to your discontentment. It also dovetails a little bit with like this. I always talk about inversion, right? Like people talk about, well, what do you want to do? What do you like? And it's like sometimes if people are confused about that, or maybe they're not listening to their true discontentment, it's good to ask the reverse question of like, just what do you not like? Like what is a non-starter for you? What do you not want to continue feeling or doing, in your current state? And when you start to think about that, you're like, yeah, that actually does frustrate me. And oh wow, now maybe there are ways that we can get around that problem or whatever. So I always like to ask both sides of that question. And I think that feeds into your like, listen to your discontentment aspect. And then I love what you said about putting your energy towards being part of the solution. It's the difference between, standing on the sidelines and being in the arena. If it's something that's a problem, problems require solutions, and you're in a unique position because you are that customer of one, you feel that problem. You can go give a unique perspective that companies, people will value in that moment. And then you can get some fulfillment out of that. So I love that as well. I see on the Career Hackers website, I see this like idea of burn your resume. Talk to me a little bit about that. Where does that come from? What do you mean by it? And what do you want people to take away from that message?
If anyone listening right now, just think about resumes for a minute. Are you feeling like you want to like jump for joy right now?
No,
Probably you're not. Like
I am not.
it's it's a pretty boring thing. It's bullet points. It's it's formal language, and it's been around, I think, for like 500 years. Like, it's really just obsolete. And it's just funny because we have so much of this technological evolution in the past, 30 years with the World Wide Web and video, and yet so there's been all this evolution, but then people are still sending resumes. Okay, we've upgraded from paper to PDF, but like it's still this antiquated approach that's really just, it's in this, again, this 20th century mindset, this mindset of checking boxes and doing what you're supposed to do. If you're supposed to go to school, go to college, get the degree, and now you apply to the company that's going to hopefully pick you. And it's this disempowered approach, basically. And we're saying you actually don't need a resume, even if the company says that on their job description, because they're just saying that probably because they don't realize what they want necessarily consciously, or they're just doing that because everyone else is doing it. It's just this kind of like non-conscious, like traditionalism. And that's okay. But what companies actually want is what we talked about earlier, which is value. It's someone who can create more value than they cost, right? So that's the true incentive that the company wants. So if you can prove that to them, they're not going to go asking for your resume. You can send a video, you can send that custom project, you can send a pitch deck, you can send an email, you can do all sorts of different approaches that go around the standard application process, which last I heard, it's like less than 1% of the time you're going to get a response back to applying the normal way on a job posting. Especially because, like half the jobs out there aren't even filled through public job postings. They're through word of mouth. And so there's just encouraging people to, you can let go of that. And maybe you actually feel a big like sense of relief because you can let go of that boring document. Now it gets fun, because then if you actually make a game out of it and say, okay, if I make a rule for myself, I'm not allowed to send the resume. Now you've given your brain, your subconscious, like a creative constraint to like get imaginative. Okay, what would I do instead? We've heard stories of people who've sent a burrito to the CEO of a company because they knew that he liked Chipotle. Like, I've sent books to companies that are like, oh, I think this company would like this book. Sending videos and again, engaging in these tools like email. Like, you can find almost anyone's email address these days on tools like hunter.io is a great tool. And we have a top tools page on our website, which is like all sorts of different resources. And it's just kind of this, just pause and take a second to think about what your approach to landing your opportunity is going to be, rather than just doing what everyone else is doing. And then get a little bit more creative, and then you can stand out. Like, I've pitched companies and with videos, and like I've done that like 20 times for jobs, and maybe like once or twice they're like, can you please also send a resume? But they didn't really need that. They just were like doing that for some formality. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it's going to be easier with the smaller the company. There's going to be a little more red tape if you're trying to like pitch a corporate job. But we encourage people, if you're looking for a job, to find those maybe smaller companies that are more exciting, or have a higher trajectory, or have more of an interesting mission. So point is that what matters is, can you create value, not can you, list your credentials.
Yeah, I'll be even more blunt about the resume thing than you were. Resumes as they are today are really a cover your ass tool for the company. They are for the HR person to say, defend themselves if they end up making a bad hire or something. See, I did this piece of paper. Like, this was the person's qualifications and credentials. Like, that's the tool to today. It is not a differentiator for you, the job seeker, whatsoever. So I firmly agree with that. And then I wanted to mention the standing out. I think I mentioned this the last time we talked, but my favorite story of somebody standing out was actually a guy. A guy found the HR person that he was applying, the company he was applying for, on Venmo somehow. I don't know how. Must have been through email or something like that, or maybe it was a friend of a friend. And he actually sent a request of money to the person, not a payment, but a request for like $50,000 for a copywriting position. And that like totally got got the attention of the hiring manager. And I thought it was just so sneaky and so cool. And he got an interview, and I don't know if he got the job because I can't remember the story exactly, but I just thought that was so creative and so interesting, and an amazing way to find people. So it just makes me laugh, and the story sticks with me to this day. It's funny.
So great. And I just reminded, when you said $50,000, like if you're looking for a job that's going to pay you $50,000, you're selling a $50,000 investment to someone.
Yeah.
Would you just buy a $50,000 car without test driving it?
Right.
No. So how can you be creative to give companies free samples? We have a page on our website about the power of doing free work. And people sometimes hear that phrase like, oh no, I don't want to be taken advantage of. And it's like, no, flip the frame entirely. You can do quote unquote free work, which just means you're not getting paid money necessarily. You're still getting a lot of value potentially, where you create these custom projects, or you say, I would love to work for you for free for a month or 7 days or whatever. And that's, even just saying that to a company is a way to signal to them how much you care about that particular opportunity, and what your willingness to go above and beyond, and your willingness to hustle and whatnot. And it's actually in your self-interest if you choose for it to be in your self-interest. If there's an opportunity that you really want, then give them that free cookie, and give yourself the opportunity to perform. If you can work for someone for a week for free, then they just their incentive to say yes to that is a lot higher, because they're not going to be paying you. So they're like, oh yeah, I would love to see what you can do. And now you have an opportunity to really show what you're actually going to be like in that job. And then you have a lot more leverage to then later ask for the actual job, versus if you never, offer that test drive, who's going to buy the car, right? So, I mean, if you think that you're getting used by somebody, then you can always quit. Like you're free. You're a free agent. So you're never going to get used if you can see that it's in your self-interest. So this is why it's so important to be self-aware and in touch with what you want, and then and think critically and creatively about these things, so that you can benefit yourself. Yeah.
And you're getting, in that particular instance, you're getting a free look at their culture from the inside as well, and to see if it's a good fit for you. I mean, you have that on the table as well. But I just love this mindset of, when you're job hunting, you're selling a $50,000 investment. I love that. That I hadn't heard that before, and it makes total sense. And I'm going to use it because I think that's fantastic.
I got to make one more plug for Charlie Hung, who I had on our podcast a while back, and he has a book called Recession Proof Graduate that he wrote in 2008. And he was finishing college, and he was doing the standard job application process, not having any luck, especially in 2008. And then he just kind of had a light bulb moment and realized that, let me pitch myself with free work. Let me pitch myself with these value propositions and actual projects. And that just completely turned everything around. And, he's worked for all these entrepreneurs and authors like Ramit Sethi and Tim Ferriss. And it's a great book to check out, even though it's 15 years old now. It's the same principles. When he just teaches you, here's what you can do. to send a custom project up front. And that's just going to give you so much ROI.
Yeah, those are just some great career hacks that we just touched on there. I want to make sure we talk about, you guys have like kind of a cool summit coming up for career hackers. I want to make sure we talk about that. So let our audience know about what you guys are doing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, thank you. We're really excited. We're putting on this big event, October 19th to 20th, Supercharge Your Career event. It's going to be a 2-day, totally free, live virtual event. And we have 12, 15 speakers booked, different career thought leaders, speaking about a range of topics, from how to build social connections, from our founder, Isaac Morehouse, who's just like the king of building connections, talking about how to build those side projects, build that digital portfolio. Ryan Ferguson's going to talk about that. How do you build that, become your own credential by showcasing your skills, finish your portfolio, and starting that blog or starting that podcast and starting that website that can show who you are. That's way more demonstrative than a resume. We're going to have Madeline Mann, who's a big YouTuber, and she worked in HR for years, and she was on the other side of the hiring process. And so she has this like just golden wisdom about interviewing, like tips for successful interviewing. She's going to sit down with me and I'm going to tease out some of her top tips to be effective in the interview, and again, think from that company's perspective. We're going to have opportunities for meet and greet. We have 500 people signed up so far, and counting. We're really excited. We want to make this thing a big event, opportunities for people to meet each other, and just feel like supercharged in your mindset. We're going to be talking to Taylor Pearson, who wrote the book, The End of Jobs, where he's kind of forecasting this economic shift we kind of touched on, where people are becoming more entrepreneurs. Whether or not you own a company, you can shift into that entrepreneurial mindset. Like that's going to be one of the themes for the event. What else? There's going to be so much good stuff. Jed Marley, who's like 22 years old, emerging thought leader in the sales world. Didn't go to college, just broke in, just started crushing quota. He's leading a sales team now, and he's going to talk about how to sell yourself, whether that's on the job hunt, whether that's when you're meeting somebody new, and getting into that mindset we touched on of value creation and seeing yourself as something that you're a service that you're selling, right? And sometimes people feel a little uncomfortable about that. Like, I'm selling myself. Like that's like superficial or not humane. And it's like, no, it's the opposite. Like, you have so much amazing value. How can you actually showcase that? Because if you have amazing value but no one knows about you, or they don't know that you have amazing value, then everyone's missing out. So it's like on you to be able to sell yourself. So those are just a few of the talks. Be at superchargecareer.com, and you can register for free, and we'll get you signed up and in the door there, and it's gonna be an amazing time.
That's awesome. I'm going to check it out as well. I am interested in these career events, and some of the speakers that you just mentioned, I really, really want to check out. And I'm actually speaking at a conference in November that a friend of mine is putting on called Expand. So I'm definitely going to be taking some notes on some good speakers and try to incorporate some of try to hack my way to a good talk for November. But really excited I'm excited about all the things that you guys are doing. I love the ethos. I love where you're coming from with mindset. And I'm really excited to check out this event. It's going to be pretty cool.
I just mentioned that the event is for anyone, any stage of their career, whether you're looking for a job actively, or you're just looking to make that pivot, or just feel more secure in this economy, right? Because it's like all this like sort of uncertainty right now in the big picture. And we're saying how do you double down on your sphere of control and your ability to empower yourself and become your own job security by fueling yourself up with this mindset. And if you can do that, then it's not really going to matter what the outside world's doing. Like, you can always choose to become a massive value creator, and companies are always going to want that. So recognizing that there might be people who are maybe in a job, but they're, like, in the back of their mind worried about a layoff or whatnot. How can you become what Seth Godin calls an indispensable, a linchpin at your current job? Like, right? And how can you learn to become someone who goes so above and beyond that they would never think to lay you off first, because you're just so irreplaceable, right? So that's the kind of ethos of this event, and we're hoping to support people in kind of developing that mindset.
Awesome stuff. Give us the website again.
Superchargecareer.com.
Superchargecareer.com. We'll make sure we send that out in socials and on a show notes page. He is Joel Bein, CEO of Careerhackers.com. So check out Career Hackers. And Joel, where else can people find you on socials and follow you and keep up with you?
Yeah, thanks so much. Feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. Send me a connection request. Send me a little note saying you heard me on the podcast. I would love to hear from you. At Joel_Bein on Twitter. JoelBein.com is my personal website. You can see some blog posts that I've written, podcasts. We have the Daily Job Hunt podcast that I'm just that's our newsletter, the Daily Job Hunt. That I just read the newsletter as a daily podcast. So yeah, there's lots of different places to connect, and I'm always excited to hear from anyone who's heard me on a podcast, and it could be a great way for you to practice this art of, like, taking initiative and meeting new people. Like, it's actually not that common for someone to contact, I think, most podcast guests. So, like, hey, I heard you on this podcast. Like if you do that, you'll stand out, and you get, like, who knows what can come from that. But, like, I would love to hear from you. So go for it.
Yes, the bar is low, and taking initiative on stuff like that. I totally agree. Joel, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate catching up. Great to hear about your progress, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate the opportunity, and keep up the good work.